Okay.
So in Kitabo, this week's Parsha,
I can't hear you,
in
Kev.
another one of the, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can, yeah.
Okay, there's a mitzvah Bikurim, which means bringing of the first fruits of the seven species of the land to the temple in Yerushalayim. And this is in Devarim chapter 26, verses 1 to 11. And basically, you have to recite a or they had to recite a specific declaration of Hakarat Hatov, of gratitude to Hashem for the land and its produce, and for bringing the Klal Yisrael out of Egypt to the land. And a practical example of this is when we eat the first fruits of the season, the seven species, you say Shechianu, as you do with certain other milestones, new house, and very significant things. But you do a Shechianu on that as well. So that would be a practical way of observing this.
Makes sense. Uh, all right. So without further ado, I'm going to present the Mishnah, and then just Aidan, yeah, we what the guys mainly wanted to do last night is we were just seeing where everybody was holding in terms of proficiency. That share was not uploaded to YouTube, which gives you an idea. That-
Okay, cool.
although your uncle actually basically encapsulated the concepts of what we were dealing with, so it was impressive actually. All right. So I want you guys to look at the Mishnah. I'm just doing this mainly for Aidan's sake. Is that Aidan, can you see it says Hakol Golem Al Yaday Yisrael? Can you see it says that?
Um, uh, okay, yeah, I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
Sorry, just need to turn up my brightness.
So Hakol Golem mean uh, uh, is that a Z? Golin? No, Goliz. I think it's Goliz. Galos. Galos. Okay. So Hakol Galos Al Yaday Yisrael.
Exile,
Yes, yes, correct. Kevin,
exile, gallows.
I'm
Yeah,
one
yeah.
step away
Well done,
from
you know,
Hebrew.
well done.
Listen, it's not that I can't read Hebrew. I can't
I know
read.
it
I'm
does
I'm
look like a
one
Nun Sofit. You're right.
I'm
You're not
one
wrong.
step
You actually
away
weren't
from
wrong.
Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles, where I'm
No,
in
no, you're
Spain.
not.
So with respect, that's why I have to memorize the shir because I can't read for Jack. Seriously. My eyes are terrible. I'm going to the ophthalmologist in the morning. Anyway, Aidan, we use this term hakol. Now, what does the term hakol imply to you?
Everybody, no
Everybody.
exceptions.
It's all inclusive, yeah. So all are exiled as a result of inadvertently killing an Israelite, and an Israelite is exiled as a result of inadvertently killing them. So it would imply that if an Israelite kills everybody else, that there'd be liability in terms of galus for them too. And it says with the exception of a resident alien. So we got to understand what that means. Is that can an Israelite kill anybody else and they're exiled inadvertently, or is can they kill everybody else except a resident alien? It's a little bit obscure, as the Mishnah will clear it up. Then it has the converse. A resident alien is not exiled except as a result of inadvertently killing another resident alien. So these are the two discrepancies without going through 100 layers. Is that on the one hand, the statement ends that a resident alien is not exiled as a result of inadvertently killing a resident alien, which means it would imply he is exiled. Sorry, apologies, guys. A resident alien is not exiled if he kills a fellow Israelite, but only if he kills another resident alien. That's how the statement ends. How the statement begins is all are exiled as a result of inadvertently killing an Israelite, meaning that even a resident alien has got that protection from the Goel Adam and can seek refuge in the city of exile. So those two terms are contrasting. So that's the first problem that we're dealing with, Aiden. The second problem is this term Hakol. All are exiled as a result of inadvertently killing in Israel. We know that's not true. Why? Because, firstly, if you look at how seriously killing is treated, is that if it's done inadvertently, which means there is a certain degree of negligence, that when you take an axe in the forest to chop wood and the axe head flies off and hits somebody in the frontal temporal lobe and they die, or a wood chop comes off a tree, then there is exile to the city of refuge, which means even though it was an accident, the degree of negligence is that you were doing an activity that had the potential to create a killing, and that's enough negligence to turn your life upside down. And if it's deemed to be gross negligence, like the axe handle is loose, or it can be deemed that you never did certain amount of checking beforehand, or you're shooting in a forest and you mean to shoot an animal, but you shoot a human being, that would allow you to be exempted from the city of exile, which means you don't get the protection and the refuge, and you're susceptible to the hands of the Goel Adam. And if it is almost bordering on the purposeful, there's the death penalty from the Sanhedrin. So if an Israelite, by the skin of his teeth, with mild negligence, gets to get that protection, otherwise he'd be killed by the family members, then surely a non-Jewish nation is susceptible to not getting protection from the Goel Adam and therefore will surely die. So we know that's the case. It's a courtesy generally extended to the fact that Jews can get kapora, atonement, and also that they live amongst the Levium in order to transform as human beings, and their life is still not the way it was until the Kohen Gadol dies and one is replaced. So, Aidan, the word hakol here in the Gemara, it says, what do you mean all? We know it's not all. So, who is it coming to include? And it's coming to include kutim, um, which is the plural for a kutat, as well as a Canaanite slave. Do you get that before we go on? Just one thing, do you get it? Do you
Yeah,
understand?
so the Kutats were like the ones that were left in Israel, right? Or who
Uh,
were they again? Remind me.
no, it's no problem. So in the second book of Kings, chapter 17, verse 24 to 41, basically they were bought by the Assyrians because they had to populate the part of Eretz Israel that was left desolate by the exile of the 10 tribes. Okay? So if you look at secular history, this is what I was speaking to Lance about last night, is that you had two terms in the BC documentary. You had the Samaritans and the Good Samaritans. Now, whenever secular history uses the word Good Samaritans, you must know if they're good Christians, it's certainly going to be bad for the Jews. Or if you use the word Good Samaritans, in this case, the Sadducees, it means they were Jews that did not accept the oral Torah nor the version of the rabbis, and they saw literal translations of the Torah. So they were Good Samaritans were basically the Sadducees, whereas the Pharisees believed in the oral and written Torah. So that was in later history. In earlier history, the Samaritans were the Kutim, and they were called Samaritans because both groups lived in Samaria in terms of region. But the early Samaritans, which were the Kutim, converted to Judaism in response to outbreak of lion attacks, fearing that they were being punished for not observing the religion of the land. So therefore, their status as Jews was debated by the various Rabbonim. And in Kedushin 75b, some say the conversion was less than sincere. It was for self-preservation. And others say it's still acceptable. And therefore, at that time, they were accepted as halachic Jews. By the time the commentaries were written on Chulin 6a, It says they were caught out in Avodah Zorah, worshipping the image of a dove on Mount Gerizim. And then they declared them to be non-Jewish. So that's it in a nutshell. Am I making sense to you, Aidan?
No, I get that completely. All right. So, okay, and the Canaanites were the ones that were in Israel before the Jews came.
Yes, so
After,
the
after,
reason
yeah.
why there was an exception, and this was covered last night, you weren't there, is there's two reasons for acceptance. The one is why the Canaanite slaves treated differently to other nations that were slaves to Jews is because they resided in the land. So um, when they're known as how do I put this, as resident aliens, okay? Um, in that particular case, if you want to view the Mishnah, they're not alien as in they don't belong in the land. They're residents of the land, but they're aliens in terms of the fact that they're not Jewish by birth, and they've taken on a quasi-Jewish status because they work for Jews, at which they're only bound by the mitzvot incumbent upon women, which is time-bound mitzvah, which is not time-bound mitzvah.
No, time.
Why? Because their time is not their own. They're in servitude. And therefore, even an employee can't, it discusses this in Gemara Brochos, Gavin Simpson, you remember, that even some of the Tanoim, they couldn't go and daven when they had their time clocked working for somebody else. They had to respect the time they were paid for. So therefore, time-bound mitzvahs were not incumbent upon Canaanite slaves, but they did enjoy a quasi-Jewish status because they resided in the land, and therefore it gave them certain merits. And as far as Kutim are concerned, they are halachic Jews, but they're considered alien in the sense that some of their civilities and their decorum was missing, some of their derech eretz. They're also alien because they came from Samaria. So there was a land issue, but not a religious issue. And sometimes their conversion, although they were considered Jewish until they were caught out, was what you call not an idyllic state. So if, for example, a non-Jewish woman falls absolutely in love, it could be a Jewish man falls in love. If a Gentile falls in love with a Jew and they convert, and this is allowed halachically, they're Jewish. But did they fall in love with Judaism? No, they fell in love with the person and were prepared to adhere to the halacha. They're Jews. Are there different levels? Yes. There could be people that don't like to sleep around because they have a bad self-body image, and other people that don't like to sleep around because they know it's not what Hashem wants of them. In other words, they're both not sinning, but their psychological reasons are very different. Am I making sense by such a weird analogy?
Yeah, when the outcome's the same, but like the reasoning behind it is
Absolutely.
different.
Absolutely. Um, so she's with a patient, or sorry. Um, so guys, just hang on 1 second. I'm just pausing the share. Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, we can continue. So once you understand that premise, guys, I hope you don't mind if we did a little bit of repetition, but Aiden wasn't here yesterday, and a lot of people yesterday were punchy. I think Gavin Simpson was the only one that seemed to have flown through it a bit. Is the Gemara wants to know if it uses the word hakol, it can't mean everybody. Because why bring up a phrase if everybody's included? Then it's a superfluous statement. So hakol means everybody that has certain merit. And the only two categories that would be similar to an Israelite is a Canaanite slave who also resided in Israel and had a quasi-Jewish status with the same halachas incumbent upon women, and a Kuttite that converted to Judaism, albeit for self-preservation motives, but they didn't come from there. So there's an alien part to them and a residential part to them of commonality. Okay, those are the only two that are added. Now, what the Gemara is coming to ask is we don't know if a Cuttite or a Canaanite slave kills an Israelite, are they eligible to have the mercy to go to the city of refuge and atone and not die at the hands of the victim's relatives, the Goel Adam, in vengeance? Or are they basically not given that protection and they die? And this is for an inadvertent killing. Obviously, for a purposeful killing, they die. And idolaters for sure die at the hands of the Sanhedrin for an inadvertent killing of an Israelite. There's no question. If the Jews
Hey,
had done,
Dame,
yeah,
I actually have a question over here.
sure.
We making the assumption that, if there's no city of refuge for them, you got the Gala done who's going to kill them. Why do we say that? Perhaps maybe they don't have the exiles, so therefore there's no atonement for them. But at the same time, who says that anyone can kill these people? Who says there is a Gala done for a non-Jew?
Okay, excellent question. I'll answer it in three parts. Thank God you're awake. You make it easier for me. All right. So if you look, Mr. Simpson, at Numbers chapter 35, verse 15, which is Bamidbar, is that correct?
Yeah,
I,
I know that all
no,
fair.
no, 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 no. Listen, I grew up secular, but I know it by English. So it's chapter 35, verse 15. I think it's Bamidbar. Okay. So it's written there, Gavin, if you look, for the children of
I'm looking.
Israel, for the convert, and for the resident alien, shall these six cities be a refuge. And that verse implies that a resident alien is subject to the protection of exile. But this is where there's a problem. In verse number 12, it's also written, the city shall be a refuge for you. And when it uses the word you, it's directive to specificity. Okay? In
Hmm.
other words, for not strangers, only Israelites, thereby excluding resident aliens from exile. So what we want to know is why the contradiction. On the one pasuk, we see that they included to get the protection of exile. On the one aspect, we see that they're not included. So what's going on here? How do we reconcile the two? Does that answer your one question?
Hmm.
Okay. Then you had another question, which was part of this, that says, well, what makes us think that they need refuge? Wasn't that your other part of your question?
Yeah, perhaps they don't because maybe the purity or the atonement doesn't apply to them.
So the thing of it is the default position is that let me just put it to you like this. That if you look at the Gemara and you finish this particular ninth daf, it concludes that an idolater is executed for killing inadvertently, regardless of whom he kills. In other words, whether he kills a resident alien or a Canaanite or Israelite, any inadvertent killing that has this element of negligence, even if it's not a gross negligence, but a certain liability, executed if they're an idolater because it's part of the Noahide laws, which means if they don't even adhere to them, they're not even given any sort of leeway whatsoever. We're going to deal with the Noahide thing also. So the Rashi explains that the basis of this law, which Gavin and I covered in Sanhedrin in 57a, that a Noahide is punished for violating any of the seven Noahide laws. Okay. And even without having been warned in advance, they don't need Hazra. So we've seen this compared to a Jew, because a Jew's got 613 commandments. There's certain leniencies because of the amount of obligations he has, whereas the Noahides or any non-Jew has seven at which they have to adhere to, and they're judged much more strictly. So he can't be executed or given lashes a yid unless he receives Hazra or Hatra'ah, as I say, because I grew up with Sephardi Yeshiva college learning. And the act he was about to perform was forbidden and subject to the punishment. So the bottom line is here that all Noahides, whether they're idol worshippers or not, are held legally liable for transgressions, even if they were inadvertent. And therefore, according to Rashi, they are executed even for killing inadvertently because there's a negligent aspect to it. You're doing a dangerous activity. Nachmanides, Gavin Simpson, doesn't agree with Rashi. He says that nobody can be punished by the courts for transgressing something that was unintentional. Okay? It's not, and therefore, the Baraisa in Sanhedrin means only that a Noahide need not receive a formal warning, and that a Jew must receive it in order to be punished. However, it still must be clear that the transgression was intentional before it can be punished. So that's also the view of the Rambam, Maimonides. So listen, and Ramban points out there is an exception with regards to killing. And this is the bottom line. So even though he's less stringent, him and Rambam and Ramban to compare to Rashi, they have a different rule for killing. Because in the case of an Israelite killing an Israelite, they're actually subject to the death penalty of the Goel Adam, the avenging relative. It's only in the case of an Israelite that the Torah provides atonement basis, and that protects him from the hands of the Goel Adam, because he's going to the city of the Leviim. And therefore, if he steps out of the Ira Miklat, he can be killed by the Goel Adam. And similarly, where the killing was the result of gross negligence, even an Israelite in that case is not exiled. It might not be what you call ambushed or premeditated, but if it's negligent enough, like discharging a firearm as opposed to chopping wood, they get the death penalty. This is a Jew straight. So for sure, a Noahide, because the Torah treats killing more stringently than other sins, and therefore a resident alien who inadvertently kills a Jew, for which is not covered by the law of exile, is actually held accountable in the courts and executed. Okay, I'm going to go through on what basis and what exceptions. But if he kills another resident alien, it does provide him atonement and protection because it's not the same level of status. Do you get what I'm saying? In other words, it's a similar spiritual path, and therefore it does offer leniency, providing it's a resident alien killing a resident alien inadvertently, but not for killing an Israelite. That's what's actually going to come out. But we got to see the mechanism of how they get there. So, if a resident alien is not actually executed for inadvertently killing an Israelite by the Sanhedrin for whatever reason, he's still susceptible to the vengeance of the Goel Adam, because he's not allowed in the jurisdiction of the city of refuge. Does that make it clear, Gavin?
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you.
Did I answer everything correctly? I'm drugged out of my mind, but I hope I answered it correctly.
Yeah, no, you did.
Okay, any other questions before we proceed? Okay. All right, listen, by the way, if I slur or don't make sense, just tell me. I make sense to me because I've memorized the daf because my eyes are so bad. But I'm going to deal with that with ophthalmologist. I don't want to need braille. Okay. So the Gemara basically wants to know that since a Canaanite slave and a Kuttite are almost on a par with an Israelite, it would seem, according to the Baraisa, then how do we equate that when you've got the Mishna that seems to show two contradictory opinions? Do you see why the Mishna, Aiden, shows two contradictory opinions? We went through it. Aiden?
Wait, which contradictory opinions with the all? Cool.
No. So the all isn't a contradictory opinion. It would seem to be in complete contrast. And how we answered it is when it means the term all. It's not all inclusive. Otherwise, why mention it if it's including everybody? You just don't have to say that. It means everybody. So when it says all, it seems as if it's including everybody else, and we learn that it's just what would seem the Israelites. And when it says the word all, the Gemara answers that it adds a Canaanite slave and a Kuttite to say that they are also exiled. They've got the benefit of exile for an inadvertent killing, simply because there's a certain par that they have in terms of their quasi-Jewish status and their converted status, and also having resided in the land of Israel and now residing in the land of Israel. So, meaning it's more than just the Israelites. So the word kol, all, is coming to include these two other categories. So that's been
Yeah,
resolved.
I get that. I could have
Yeah.
explained that, but I can't explain the most recent one.
No, that's fine. So the contradiction is a resident alien is not exiled. In other words, he's not allowed to have the benefit of exile except as a result of inadvertently killing another resident alien. And then it contrasts with the fact that it seems as though they get the benefit of exile if they kill an Israelite. Obviously, inadvertently. I mean, that goes without saying. So we don't understand why there seems to be this apparent
Okay.
contradiction in the Mishnah.
All
That's
right.
we got to get the Baraisa to help us. So the Gemara. So basically, we've learned from inference that the Mishnah and the Mishnah hints to these two contradictions by inference, but the Baraisa is clear, and that's taught by the rabbis. It's explicit, because what does it say? A Canaanite slave or a Kuttite is exiled and receives lashes as a result of what he did to an Israelite. Okay, which seems, and an Israelite is exiled and receives lashes as a result of what he did to a Kuttite or a slave. Does that make sense, guys? In other words, what the Bryce is trying to say, the Mishnah is going to contrast between the fact that he deserves the city of refuge or exile, it would seem, for killing an Israelite, and the other one says he deserves that for killing a fellow resident alien. So we don't know if it includes an Israelite or not. That's the bottom line. Just hang on, I'm just putting this on pause. Is your client leaving now, Pam? I'm just putting this here on pause. Pam?
Yeah.
Is your client leaving now?
Megan?
No, it's fine. Guys, can I ask you a big favor? Before getting into a complicated topic, we've got about 8.5 minutes left. Should we resume tomorrow? We cleared up a lot of issues. I hope this helps. And let's just look at it tomorrow. You've had a half an hour. I'm sure it's enough of me. As Gavin Simpson said, increments. There's only so much of me you can take. You have to build resistance.
I'm not sure there's any resistance to you, but yeah, I agree with you. Let's continue tomorrow.
Yeah, you know what I want to get into, Gavin, is because if I get into it and I hit partiality, I'm just repeating myself tomorrow. So we cleared up a lot of issues. Gavin, you were spot on the mark yesterday because you were alert, but a lot of the guys suffer from fatigue. You know what I mean? Or they're not well, or they're running, or Lance is getting an iron transfusion. Gavin's got fibromyalgia. Between us all, we make a healthy person, plus Aiden.
Yo, most of us do stuff during the day.
Yeah, we all do stuff during the day, Aiden.
We keep busy, yeah.
We might look old, but at the moment we're holding the realms of power until your generation wrestles it away from us and pries it from us finger by finger. But we ain't letting go that easy.
And Damon,
Yeah.
I gave a friend of mine a cheese grater. He's blind. A cheese grater for his birthday, and he said it was the most violent book he ever read.
It wasn't a great present, Arthur.
Yeah.
But he was grateful anyway.
He was grateful, yes.
Oi. As I said, we all capped in some ways. All right, guys, have a good evening. We'll start again tomorrow. I hope this was helpful. Guys, did it help you? I know it might have been.
No, it did. I was in such a bad way yesterday, I could hardly hear you. Today I heard you pretty clearly. Not
Gavin
100%.
Simpson, I know you were a bit ahead. You know what's going on, but it was just for the benefit of everybody else as a team.
Thank you. It was great.
Shot
Yeah,
guy.
I think it's quite clear now. Thanks.
Oh,
Well done.
great.
Ciao.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers.